Okay, good evening. Thank you everybody for joining us. I want to make sure that folks are able to hear me okay, and if not, then please use your chat function to raise any issues or let folks know if you're having any issues on the technical side at all. We have Barry Craig who is joining us this evening and who is ready to assist on the technical side if you have any problems. So please use that chat function and let folks know. Welcome to this virtual meeting for the I-65 Safety and Efficiency Project. We had an in-person meeting last night at Sense Charter School, had some great conversations there, appreciated the folks who were able to join us. And we wanted to have this opportunity for a virtual meeting for the people who sometimes it can be very difficult at this time of day to get out of the house, make time for a meeting like this. So wanted to make this opportunity available. My name is Mindy Peterson. I am the Public Involvement Director at Parsons, which is the lead project development and design firm on this project. I'm joined by John LeBlanc, who you see there as well. He is the project manager for I-65 Safety and Efficiency. And then, of course, this is an NDOT project. So we have some NDOT team members with us this evening as well, taking part in this virtual meeting, and we appreciate their time as well. So before we get started, I just wanted to share some brief housekeeping items so everybody is aware of kind of the overview and what's happening with this meeting. I did want to let you know that the cameras and the mics are only on for John and myself who are presenting tonight, but we do welcome any questions and comments that you want to send in our direction during this presentation. Please feel free to do so. Use the chat function. I think most people now are pretty familiar with using Teams and various platforms. So that chat for most people is going to be right on the black band at the top of your screen. But at any point that you want to drop us a comment or a question, please feel free to do so. The intent is at the end of this presentation, we should have some time remaining. If we can get through any of those questions and answers and provide some pretty quick answers to you, we will do so at the end of this presentation. If we have a question that is going to be a little more involved and take a little more time and attention, we have your contact information that you use to sign up for this meeting. We'll simply use that contact information and we'll make sure and get a response to you. So anything that we can get through pretty quickly at the end, we'll do so. Anything that's a little more detailed, we will get a response to you offline. Just wanted to flag that as well. But again, at any point, please feel free to drop any questions or comments. And if it's just a comment, we're happy to take those comments that you share through the chat function, and we'll make sure that those are shared with the full project team and they'll become part of the project record as well. Okay, so what can you expect tonight? I-65 Safety and Efficiency is a project that we actually launched last fall, and we had a set of public meetings then. We had one in person and we had one virtual meeting, and it was really at that point an introduction to the project. We wanted to let you know what we're talking about when we're talking about I-65 Safety and Efficiency, what to expect from the project, timeline, that sort of thing. Now we are coming back to you and we have more information to share. So we want to start out by doing a quick reset of what I-65 Safety and Efficiency is. Then John is going to jump in and he's going to have a lot more details to share on those anticipated improvements. The project team has been hard at work. We've spent some time identifying needs, identifying potential solutions. So he has a lot of good information to share with the group tonight. That includes some bridge improvements. He'll be talking about that information. And then we'll be letting you know, when can you expect to hear from us next? What are those next steps? We'll walk through that. And we also want to make sure that you always have clear contact channels on how to reach us. So those are the items we'll be covering this evening. We'll start with that quick reset of I-65 Safety and Efficiency and what we mean when we talk about this project. So when you take a look at the map there, that is our project area. This is about a 5-mile corridor, and it's really taking you, it's on the southeast side of Indy, and it's taking you from I-465 basically, and it's taking you then north all the way up to the South Split, so near Fletcher Avenue there, right where 65 and 70 are splitting. So again, about 5 miles, and NDOT is taking a really good look at this area and saying, okay, we're seeing some issues here. We're seeing some congestion. We're seeing some queuing up. We're seeing some safety issues. We're seeing some accidents. What do we need to do to make some of the improvements that are going to mean a better commute for drivers? So that's what has happened. We've seen a need. We've identified that need, and we're coming through now and identifying those potential solutions. Some of those solutions will include added capacity. John's going to go through that in detail. I mentioned bridge improvements. We want to take care of the pavement as well, make sure that's a good ride for drivers who are counting on I-65. And then another part of this as well that we'll be talking about are sidewalk improvements. So we'll be talking about that as well. We want to let you know next what has been happening with the project. I already mentioned this, that we have spent the time since we talked last in really focusing in on what are the needs for the area. We've talked about solutions and what those are going to look like. And now we have some recommendations to share with the public and share more details this evening. Public feedback is a big part of this process, and that's something that we have considered throughout the project. One prime example here, when this project started and we first met with the public last year and we met with our advisory groups, we were really focused on I-65. We were focused on the interstate and what happens on the interstate. And a lot of our, several of our advisory committee members and members of the public, when we met with the public, said, that's great, but what's happening below the interstate? What's happening with the sidewalks there? Is there room for improvement? And our team said, hey, great point. Let's take a look at what truly can be part of this project. And when you're talking about sidewalks and connectivity there, for a project like this, it's going to take you ramp to ramp. That is what is considered NDOT's area of being able to get in and see what's possible, doable, reasonable, feasible. So John's going to walk through that, and really that's been an entire going through the corridor and doing a complete inventory and seeing what improvements are needed on that front. So we'll share that information as well. And then a lot of coordination, some of the ideas that John will be sharing this evening, that's all possible because of the ongoing coordination that we have with several groups, including the Department of Public Works, DPW, working very closely with them to make sure that the work that's happening here with I-65 S&E meshes with the plans that they have. So when we talk about expected improvements, we've mentioned some of these things already. Didn't talk about drainage, but that's a big deal as well. John will go into a little more detail on that side. That's something that sometimes you overlook, but the improvements there, but that's a big deal. When you can improve drainage, it's going to help extend the life of the infrastructure that we're talking about, and it makes a big difference. So that's something important to take care of. And the other thing that I wanted to point out on this map, we talk about that added capacity, and we're going to be talking about an additional lane for I-65 in this area. We've seen the need there with the traffic numbers that we're seeing. And the nice thing about this project, because of the area we're talking about, if you look at your map there, basically picking up at Keystone right around that area and south is where we're going to need to widen to the outside. That's where the room is available, and that's where we will add the additional travel lane. When you go Keystone and north, so the majority of the project corridor there, we have a good opportunity because this is an area, if you drive it, you know, there are very wide inside shoulders there. It's a wide inside shoulder. It's about 17-foot shoulder, lots of room. The team has to go in and make that ready for cars, do a little bit of strengthening of the pavement there, but the pavement exists. And so this is a project where honestly, you're able to get a lot of bang for your buck. You're not having a lot of impacts on right of way and additional room and pavement. You're able to take advantage of what is already in place, utilize that existing pavement, get it ready for cars, and improve the traffic flow in this area. So that's pretty exciting too. So with that, we will have an added travel lane that will extend at the end of this project. We'll be going 4 lanes on I-65 from I-465 up to I-70. That should make a big difference in commute. And we've already talked about how we're utilizing that existing inside shoulder for most of that work and most of the improvements. So with that, that's a broad stroke, and that's the overview, but I know that you joined us tonight to hear some of the fine detail on that. So I'm going to turn things over to John, and he's going to let you know what's been happening on that front.
Yep, thank you, Mindy. Just to reiterate what Mindy said, when this project was originally scoped, we were only doing work to I-65 and Hannah Avenue. But with the coordination that we've done with the public and Rethink and the CAC and the EJ, there has been came to the NDOT attention that a lot of the pedestrian facilities underneath could be looked at as well. And so we've incorporated a number of those into the project. So The takeaway is we are listening to the public. We are listening to concerns. We are trying to do our best to be good stewards of the corridor while still keeping within the funded amount and with the scope of the project, which was on I-65. So the way we're going to accomplish that is if you break up the area into two, and when we look at just north of Keystone to 465, the existing pavement is concrete, and that's that lighter color concrete. We are going to add the additional travel lane to the outside. And the reason why we can't go to the inside like we can the rest of the project is the inside shoulder just isn't wide enough. We looked at could we possibly restripe a lot of these lanes to try and get that lane on the inside, and it's just not feasible. What ends up happening is that pavement joint comes off the lane line and vehicles would be driving on that pavement joint and it will deteriorate extremely quickly, so we're not able to get away with that. So for the southern end of the project, we are going to add the additional 12 feet of pavement to the outside. Then when we get north of Keystone, the pavement material changes from that light colored concrete to the darker color HMA or asphalt. Where that occurs, the inside shoulder widens out to almost 17 feet. And that's where we are able to provide the additional lane on the inside shoulder. So that 17-foot was going to be left with about a 12-foot lane and a 5-foot shoulder. The picture you see on there, it does get a little widened in some areas, but for the most part, it's about a 12 and 5-foot is what we'll walk away with. Now, we kind of joke, this is just a restriping project. If that inside shoulder were thick enough to handle truck traffic, we probably would have legitimately just restriped the inside to add the additional lane and walk away. However, the pavement is not able to handle truck traffic, so we are going to have to reconstruct it. When we are removing both inside shoulders, that median barrier will most likely get damaged, and so will the drainage structures. So we're going to go ahead and replace those all at the same time. Also, when we're leaving a much narrower shoulder, we got to make sure that we get the water off the roadway. So we will provide a few more inlets, and then the concrete median barrier will be provided with the proper truck height when we are said and done. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want us to take a quick look at this because a lot of the concern comes with what is happening at the northern end of the job. So we are widening to the inside, not so much widening as we're replacing the inside shoulder. However, we are going to add about 0.8 of a mile of 12 feet on the outside from the northbound Raymond entrance ramp to the south split. So just north of the Morrison Prospect Bridge, the South Split project came through in about 2015, 2016, somewhere around there, and they widened the shoulder south of Fletcher and north of Morrison Prospect. We are going to restripe that outside widened shoulder to extend the Washington Street exit ramp. That is done for a number of reasons, primarily for traffic. A lot of times that exit ramp backs up onto the interstate, and providing a longer deceleration distance and a longer exit will help keep motorists on northbound 65 to continue to move on 65 and that ramp traffic to be off of those northbound lanes. So if we look at what we have today, on the left-hand part of the screen, it says existing. And that's if you are on northbound 65 over Pleasant Run on the bridge. You have 3 lanes, a wide inside shoulder and an outside shoulder. So the left-hand part of that screen shows that you've got the inside lane is northbound 65. That if you continue on that and go over Morrison Prospect, that will continue to go to westbound I-70. If you are in the right lane of northbound 65, you will continue to go northbound through the South Split and beyond. It's that middle lane that is called an option lane. If you are in that lane, you have the option to go to northbound 65 or westbound 70. So the existing configuration of 65 over Pleasant Run is 3 lanes until you get to Morrison Prospect, and then it's 4 lanes. So now, what are we proposing, and how does that tie into what's out there now? So if we look at the right side of the screen, it shows the proposed. So we're taking that widened inside shoulder and reducing it and putting the travel lane in that shoulder. So now we will have 2 lanes of northbound 65 that go to westbound 70. So we got rid of the option lane. We turned it into a northbound 65 lane, and that's how we get the 2 lanes. Now, if we ignore the Raymond Street for the time being, we have 2 lanes of northbound 65 that continue northbound 65. So with the inside shoulder now becoming a lane, we went from 3 lanes to 4, and now we're going to have 4 lanes to 4. So there's no widening occurring with that movement. The widening that we are referring to is the Raymond Street entrance ramp to Washington Street. We are going to do a little bit of widening on the bridges. We have 3 bridges that need to be widened, but the northbound 65 over Shelby Street is already wide enough that we don't have to widen all the bridges. We are also only widening 12 feet to accommodate that additional lane. And like I said, it's about 8/10, 9/10 of a mile. So it's not a super long stretch. This is all needed for a number of reasons. The northbound entrance ramp currently has to merge onto 65 northbound. And there's a lot of traffic on northbound Raymond trying to get on the interstate. And what happens is all that traffic is trying to merge on 65. And when there is a peak rush hour, like in the morning, there's not enough gaps in the traffic for that merging to occur safely. So people are trying to sneak in and they slam on their brakes so they don't run in the car in front of them. And then next thing you know, you have all these red lights back or tail lights backing up. Or there's a high accident rate here. Side swipes are occurring, rear end collisions. So we really need to extend that entrance ramp in order to make things safer. So some of these bridges would have to be widened regardless. The other thing is, with that connection to the new pavement that will be part of the Washington Street exit ramp, we've looked at this from a traffic standpoint. And that additional auxiliary lane is needed in order to make a proper level of service for the interstate. That is part of the scope, as that it also is part of the safety component, is that we have to achieve a minimum level of service. And the only way that this section of interstate can achieve that is by extending that auxiliary lane that less than a mile. So the way I want to make sure that I've been using the car analogy a lot lately. And what is happening here is I just want folks to know and have rest assured that whatever is happening at this location does not tie in this interchange or this part of the interstate forever. The stuff that we are doing here is to get us to the anticipated lifespan of the interstate. So these bridges and the roadway pavement, we're looking about an 80-year lifespan, and we're about 60, 65 years all the way in. So the best way to describe that is you have a 60 to 65-year-old car, and you're going to go out there and you're going to put 4 new tires and you're going to detail it. At the end of the day, the car, even though the tires are new, is still attached to a 60, 65-year-old car. And now we're trying to think about, okay, what kind of car can we buy in the future, because this car only may last another 15 or 20 years. The same is true with the interstate. So that new lane and the widened bridges are still attached to a 60, 65-year-old infrastructure, and it'll have no bearing on what is done in the future. So a lot of the public has the interest of doing something at the South Split, and the work we do here will not dictate what is done in the North Split or in the South Split. Again, at the end of the day, the car is 60 years old. The tires are new. You don't save the tires when you trade the car in. The car and the tires go in together, and that's what we're doing here as well. We are trying to achieve a safer corridor. In order to do that, this work has to be done. Next slide, please. So bridge improvements. So Hannah Avenue is going to get a brand new bridge. That's to accommodate the outside widening. If we go to the next slide, please. Picture is worth 1,000 words. So this is if you're on the west side of Hannah Avenue. So if you're on the University of Indianapolis or the Keystone side and you're looking to the east. And what you see here is there's a shared use path on the right side, or that southern side. You're going to have the 2 travel lanes and a sidewalk on the north side. We have coordinated this with DPW about 4 or 5 years ago to make sure that they were on board with this. And then Mindy and I have reoccurring bi-monthly meetings with DPW. Our latest one was in August to still confirm that this typical section meets their pedestrian long-range plan, and it does. I was talking to some of the public yesterday, and they have confirmed that there is some new development west of this bridge, that the 5-foot sidewalk has been going into the ground right now. Now, the 5-foot sidewalk, when you are further away from the road and you have a grass buffer, you can get by with a narrow sidewalk. But when you are adjacent to the roadway, you need a wider sidewalk, and that's 6 feet. So that is why you see a 6-foot sidewalk. Here we show 6'7" because we have the curb. So there will be a curb to provide a vertical separation between motorists and the path. And then again, on the south side, we provide a shared use path as well. In order to accomplish this, we have to meet a minimum clearance over I-65. So we actually have to raise the bridge up because it is getting a tad bit wider. In order to do that, we have to buy a small amount of right-of-way on the west side of 65 at Hannah Avenue in order to accomplish that. Next slide, please. So other bridges, Naomi Street, Pleasant Run, and Morris Prospect will get wider. I did want to mention Morris Prospect. That is where we will also give that bridge a new deck. Again, when we widen the bridge, we are decreasing the vertical clearance over the roadway underneath. So we will have to make sure that we will raise it a bit in order to achieve that. And the Morris Prospects will also get a new deck. But again, it is a new deck and a widening that's still attached to a 60-year infrastructure. So again, I just want to reiterate that that bridge is not brand new. It's a new deck, so that's just that top part that people drive on. Everything below that is still existing. And whatever comes out of the propel, that this will not dictate what comes out of the propel in any possible future projects. Next slide, please. So other improvements. So we are going to patch the pavement, and that's in both sections. Since we will have this partially under construction, let's go ahead and let's extend the pavement life. In the HMA section, or the asphalt, that darker material where the added travel lane will be on the inside, we will also take off the top layer and put a new layer on. Again, we are trying to extend the pavement life, but also for rideability and driver comfort. And that is to also help us extend that to the next 15, 20 years. The bridges will also, majority of the bridges will also get it's called a new overlay. Again, we will go on the bridges, we will patch any holes or repairs that need to be done, and then we'll put a new sealant on top. Again, that sealant is supposed to last about 15, 20 years, and that's to help us to get to that 20-year. And by that point, we should have NDOT should have an idea of what the next step will be, and therefore the safety and efficiency project will get us to that point. And then I mentioned when we replace the inside shoulder, we will also add new drainage structures. All right, so let's talk about sidewalk. Again, there has been a lot of public opinion about, hey, NDOT, can we do something with the sidewalks? I did want to make note that NDOT only has jurisdiction and the ability to make improvements within NDOT right-of-way. Anything beyond the right-of-way is owned by DPW, and they have to make those improvements. So we have sent a team out into the field to literally walk every underpass and make recommendations, and we are going to provide all new lighting at every underpass. We are also going to replace any damaged or broken sidewalk panel, and then we've evaluated the ADA curb ramps to make sure that anything within right-of-way, NDOT's right-of-way meets as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so we already talked about Hannah. We talked about throughout the corridor. Keystone. So a few years ago, the Keystone Avenue Bridge was replaced and a portion of the sidewalk was also replaced. Now we're going to come back. We're going to provide new vehicular signals and pedestrian signals at those two interchanges. We are going to replace the curb ramps so that they meet current ADA standards, and we will replace the remaining part of the sidewalk within NDOT right-of-way. And and replace the, actually, I believe these light fixtures are good. However, if they are not good, we will make sure those get replaced with anti-vandal light fixtures as well. Troy, Nelson, Southern, and Bradbury, we have done the field investigation in all these locations as well, and we will replace anything that is broken or needs repairing. Raymond Street, we've heard a lot of public opinion about Raymond Street. When the BRT line came through a few years ago, they replaced a number of the curb ramps already. We have gotten survey and will ensure that those curb ramps meet. The pedestrian signal equipment is also brand new, and we'll make sure that that's good as well. However, they did not touch a lot of the existing sidewalk. So we will come through and we will replace all the existing sidewalk, and that will meet current ADA standards for widths and cross slope. Naomi Street, as you can see from that wonderful picture, that half the sidewalk is covered with debris and sediment and everything else. You can also notice that it looks like there's two different panels of sidewalk. So you've got about a 5-foot wide panel, and then when you get close to the road, it takes a nosedive for about 2 feet. We're going to replace all of the sidewalk within this area. We are going to achieve a single cross slope of whatever the sidewalk width is now. So if that's 6 feet, we'll replace it. If it's 7 feet, we'll replace 7 feet. We'll put back what the existing width is or greater in order to meet current ADA standards. We will also raise the curb in order to meet that single cross slope, so we don't have grade breaks that, you know, if there were a person with impaired mobility in a wheelchair or a baby stroller, we don't want anything happening that could be unsafe there. Pleasant Run, we anticipate we are going to have to replace a portion of the Pleasant Run Trail with the bridge widening. We will provide a temporary runaround for Pleasant Run that will be used the entire time. So there will always be 100% pedestrian mobility access through the project site. The temporary runaround will most likely go between the roadway and the existing pier, so the other side of that pier. And then when the project is done, we will replace the Pleasant Run Trail and remove the existing or that temporary runaround. Shelby Street, the DPW came through and has already done a lot of great improvements. We have heard for a couple ideas from the public. However, we are not proposing to do any work to Shelby Street because that is a corridor-wide pedestrian improvement. And if we do anything different, then it could mess up pedestrian expectancy if they're shifting around or they come to a wider median or whatever that may end up being. So if there are improvements the public would like to see, that is a separate project by DPW that we will not be handling, but we will look at all the lighting and replace that. The last one I wanted to mention is Morrison Prospect, and this was also up there with Raymond Street on people feel that is unsafe. We have been in talks with DPW. They are on board with working with us. We don't have anything solidified yet, but it is anticipated that we will remove that outside lane and we will make a wider multi-use path on both sides. So big time improvements on Morrison Prospect. Again, we can only do things that are within NDOT right away. However, DPW seems to be on board with adding this into their pedestrian and mobility plan, which is great news. And they will be able to hopefully come down the future and tie into what we're proposing. So we've heard the outcries on Morrison Prospect, and we are going to do something which is pretty cool. I did want to note that whenever we are doing pedestrian improvements and construction, we will always provide an alternate route. Chances are that will come from, we will close one side of the street and we will leave the other side open. We will provide access from one side of the road to the other. That may be handled with a temporary curb ramp in order to make that work, but we will make sure that pedestrian access at all locations will be accessible. We do understand that a lot of pedestrians use all these crossings, and we want that to be maintained. Next slide, please. Okay, so now the noise study. The noise study will be completed soon. We have already submitted a draft report. We have got comments back, and we need to make some adjustments, and we will resubmit that for review. When that noise analysis has been approved by NDOT, we will then reach out to the public. We are following FHWA's policy for the noise policy. NDOT's policy is to follow that, which is good news. And then we will determine if noise abatements are required. I did want to note that when we look at our noise walls, noise abatement, is that necessary? We are looking at benefited receivers. However, there is a misconception what a benefited receiver is. That is any property that is within 500 feet of the corridor. So if you are in a neighborhood that's near the corridor, but you may be a half a mile or mile away from the corridor, you are not a benefited receiver and you will not get a noise card. Only those who are benefited receivers, which are close enough to be benefited by a noise abatement measure, will you receive that. And the way we determine is we look at a baseline, which is how much noise is existing that is currently coming from the interstate. And then with the additional inside travel lane, how much more noise will that create? And if it exceeds that increase, that's when a noise wall is to be determined if it's reasonable and feasible. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Mindy to talk about the next steps for the noise.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. So one of the reasons why we wanted to flag noise is not only because we know that noise barriers are going to be of interest to folks, but also this is truly the next step in the process here. So we anticipate outreach happening in the next several weeks. So this fall, so those people who are in that close proximity that John mentioned will be getting a postcard from us. That's going to explain the process. That's going to say, do you want the sound barriers? Yes, no. They have to be within the area that John said. We really want to hear from more than half the folks we're reaching out to. That's not always an easy number to reach. So we will get a postcard out. We will also, in all likelihood, get a second postcard out, trying to get to that 50% number. And if we don't get there, that's not the end of the road there. We'll also try additional tactics. So we mentioned in the next slide here that there are several things that we want to do to try to get to that number. So we will figure out what are the community events that are happening that we can go to. Are there apartment complexes where we can set up a table and have information there? And we'll do our due diligence and make sure that we verify addresses on our side. But we want to make sure that we're reaching the people in the area. We want them to feel comfortable. So we'll also be reaching out and seeing, are there some neighborhood liaisons that we can work with? People who have a more familiar face that will put people at ease if they see us sitting there and they're like, oh, I know so-and-so, this is okay. I can talk to them. I can see what they need. So just know that this is really the next step on the process. And the other thing that John already alluded to is we are expecting significant impacts along the corridor. So we'll likely be touching a lot of folks who live along this corridor in that immediate area. So just wanted to flag that. That's going to be coming soon. Likely in early October, you'll start hearing from us. So wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was coming. Other than that, we really just want to make sure that everybody feels good about next steps and the process here. So we have a timeline that is available on the project website. I didn't really mention the website yet. It's I65safetyandefficiency.com. This is up here, all of the maps, all of the materials. Honestly, everything that was at the public meeting last night, all of the display boards, this presentation, we'll have a recording from tonight's meeting that will be there. We have a very thorough handout that includes a lot of the pieces that we discussed tonight. That's available for download. We also have a comment form that's available there. We have a blank comment form that you can fill out as well. All of that information available. So this timeline has some key information. If we look at the next slide, you see all of it kind of spelled out for you, and we just kind of put words to what's going on here. So we mentioned the noise analysis, that outreach expected to happen this fall. It's going to be a big milestone next spring when we have that draft environmental document. A little bit different process surrounding that draft environmental document. That's when we'll be releasing not only the recommendations for this project, but all of the work that has gone into this. So you'll see all of the data, all of the information, all of the analysis, the tables, all of that will be available for the public to put eyes on. We will have a public hearing, a little bit different than a meeting. That's when people have the opportunity to sign up. They'll get 2 or 3 minutes. They'll be able to deliver comments. We'll record those comments. They become part of the project record. We have a formal comment period that will last, at least 30 days at the time that we have the draft environmental document. The public hearing, part of that comment period. It's only one part. People can also share comments by email. They can fill out a comment form. We'll have comment forms available throughout the community. So that's something that we'll do a lot of publicizing around that comment period and the public hearing to make sure that everybody knows what to expect from that process. And then any of those comments that we receive during the formal comment period, we do respond to those in that final environmental document. So you'll see the comment, you'll see a response from the project team. And then construction, that's a big deal. We anticipate construction starting in spring of 2025, and it's going to last about 2 years. Okay, meeting materials. I mentioned those handouts. It's a very robust handout that has a lot of information included in it. A lot of the maps, the sidewalk improvement table that we saw tonight, the graphic there on Morris Prospect, all of those are included in the handout. If you want to get your hands on one of those handouts and you don't want to print it out because it is a folded 11 by 17 piece, you can go to any of these community locations. These materials are now available. We actually went out on the corridor today and we placed the handouts and we place comment forms, and we also have a box there. So if you want to fill out your comment form on site, you can do so. Leave it right there in the box. At the end of the comment period associated with this set of public meetings, we'll go back by and we'll pick up those completed comment forms. So lots of opportunities to engage with us. You're going to see the project logo. You'll see a little stand there that says, you know, the materials are here, what you need to pick up, what you can leave behind. And if you'd rather just take the comment form with you and upload that to the website, that's no problem as well. You can just include that as an easy attachment and send it in our direction as well. And this list of locations you'll also find on our project website. So it's going to be easy to find the information that you need. Comment form, I mentioned it, so it is important. We will cover some quick comments tonight. I know we have one question that came in that we'll get to, but we do have this comment form not only at those locations I talked about, but it's also available for download on the project website. You can upload that scanned copy to us. You don't have to. There's an empty comment form, just a comment function and box there on the website. Feel free to complete that and share your comments that way. They all count the same. We do ask that you provide your comments by September 29th. Nothing magical with that, except for the fact that we need to have a cutoff period in order to put together all of the comments that we're getting in a connection with these public meetings. We want to put all of those together. So we'll do so September 29th, but we always welcome feedback. And these are the contact channels for us. INDOT4U is fantastic. Do mention this project. We have the project website I talked about. Then social media. If you're not following us there now on Facebook and Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, you can join us there, and that's a great way to stay in touch with the project. So that's the information we had tonight. Really just wanted to pass that along. And we did have one question, Stephen, I said we would get to at the end of the presentation. So we'll throw that one open for you, John, and we'll see if anybody else has any questions they want to drop in. This was on the sidewalk, and you talked about the sediment. You showed the picture. So is that something you guys are going to be able to take care of?
So that's at Naomi. As you can see in that bottom picture, there's riprap. We are going to remove the riprap. And if you look at the very top picture, that is called a concrete spill slope. It's not riprap. That's what we will put back on both sides of Naomi. I think around Pleasant Run, we may place some crushed stone in lieu of the dirt as well. So a lot of it already has concrete spill slopes. I mean, if you look at Raymond, they've got that. But there are a couple areas we will improve that to keep sediment from flowing over the sidewalk.
All right, perfect. Detour question. Will detours be available during construction, or will the lanes on 65 be available? And there's going to be a strong plan on this front. John, what's going on with maintenance of traffic?
Yep. So currently the plan is on I-65. We're going to keep multiple lanes open at all times. Obviously, we will have to close some lanes in order to get that work to be done, but 65 should be open a majority of the time, if not all the time. Hannah Avenue will be a complete closure just because you can't phase that. And it is better to just rip the Band-Aid off, close it for 4 months, build the bridge back as fast as the contractor possibly can and put that back. And then I think on Naomi, in order to do that work, there may be a very short-term closure that we are working with DPW on. But for the most part, no closures on 65 that we're anticipating. Very short-term closures underneath, except for Hannah, in order to rebuild the bridge.
Perfect. And I'll also flag here because I see somebody else dropping in a question. I know there's been a lot going on the construction side, and I know it's easy to get that construction fatigue, and you see all the closures. It all at the end of the construction there is progress, and all of this is done in very close coordination.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons why construction on this project is slated to start in spring of 25. Will be through some of the work and major projects, at least, that we are seeing currently underway in Indy. So there is a lot of coordination that happens on that front, and we do want to take advantage when the dollars are available and we can make the investment to make the improvements that are needed. Safety. Okay, so Polly had a question about
Yep.
safety. We have mentioned it. Relieving congestion, speeds can go up. So there are a lot of things that go in, and John, I'll let you touch on them. But I know that there are a lot of issues when we see some of the traffic queuing up, as we do now with the brake lights, the stopping, the rear end
Yep.
crashes, the weaving. I'll let you take it from there.
Yep. So, thanks, Mindy. A couple of areas we've identified that are the problem areas are when the northbound Raymond, which is a lot of traffic, merge onto 65, kind of like we already talked about. We really need to extend that entrance ramp so that people have more time to merge onto 65. That will be a huge help. Also, extending the Washington exit ramp will also be a big solution problem as well. And then adding that less than a mile auxiliary lane will really help the level of service for the entire corridor. I understand what Paulie is saying. However, providing more space for cars to merge together and safely travel does improve the safety for the overall corridor. Because right now, especially in the morning for northbound, there's too many cars for the number of lanes that are out there. And when that happens, you have a lot of rear end collisions, you have a lot of congestion, you have a lot of backups, and providing that additional lane will help alleviate that congestion, which will in turn help alleviate and possibly mitigate and reduce those rear end collisions as well. So these few items that we're doing, these low cost items, will greatly improve the overall safety and mobility for the corridor.
And it looks like we have somebody else dropping in a comment or a question, so we'll wait for that. So if people have had their responses and their questions answered and they have the information they need, that's really the presentation that we have on our side tonight. We'll keep the chat function open for a few minutes, and if we get some additional questions, we're happy to answer those. I'll also flag that if you want to get a question to us offline outside of this meeting, that the website that's right there on your screen is a great way to get in touch with us, and we will get a response to you. So this certainly is one opportunity, but it's not the only opportunity to get your questions answered.
And like Mindy said, there will be future touch points down the road. That this isn't your one and only opportunity. So if you have more questions, if you're thinking of this winter, we will be reaching back out to the group more than once.
I still see the bubbles, John, so I'm going to give somebody who's typing a little bit
Yeah,
of time to see if they want to come through with
I don't
that.
mind staying on.
Yes. Yeah. One thing I did not mention in those areas where we dropped off project materials today, we have a nice size stack of the handouts and comment forms. We also have that the comment form and the handout available in Spanish at all of those locations. So if that's something that's beneficial for folks, it's available either they can pick up in person at any of those sites, or the Spanish versions of those materials are also available on the website. So just wanted to flag that.
Okay, we have another question. There hasn't been any mention either of induced demand. Has this been considered? It's no secret that infrastructure within India is crumbling. This leads to additional car trips, etc. We actually have we've gotten this comment before. We've done quite a bit of outreach, and yes, we have looked at induced demand. This does not induce demand. In order to do that, we have to be providing additional businesses around the area, and the area is built up. So, unless Amazon decides to go in downtown, we are not bringing more motorists through this corridor. The folks that are using this corridor are already going downtown. So I had a pretty extensive conversation with our traffic engineer guru, who has also worked with many traffic gurus at NDOT, and all parties are on the same page that this will not induce demand and bring additional vehicles through downtown, just because we're not providing any more businesses to go to. We're just making this corridor safer.
I mentioned the recording of this meeting that will be available as soon as tomorrow. So obviously, the folks who have joined us have the information, they've heard from us. But if you know somebody who might be interested and didn't have a chance to join us, and if they want to breeze through some of this information, that will be available as well.
Will that position be included in the draft environmental document? I don't believe we actually submit our traffic analysis and traffic report into the environmental document. However, I believe we do present the findings. We do have to show that there is a purpose and need for the project. And one of the purposes, or excuse me, one of the needs for the project is we don't meet the proper level of service now, let alone in the next 20 years, which is how long the corridor needs to last. So we will provide the findings of the traffic analysis, but that has been approved by NDOT, and they're on board with everything that we've done to date. We actually used a lot of their backbone models along with some other other data that we've collected.
And that draft environmental document, for folks who are not aware, that is a very comprehensive document. I mean, that we're talking about a document that's very detailed, very lengthy. Several appendices will be a part of that. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of information and transparency with that. And yes, it is a
it's a CE4, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
And not an EIS. It's
so a little bit different. EIS is a little more detailed, and there are more requirements, there are more impacts, more requirements. This project doesn't have as many of those impacts, so it is what's called a categorical exclusion. Yes, John, you said that CE4.
CE4, yes. Categorical exclusion 4, like you said. Yep.
Yeah.
Reference link to CE4. Let me see, I have that. So it's based off of the FHWA and NDOT Environmental Services Division. I actually have that single page on my screen. I apologize. I don't know what document it is from. That is something that if you ask us in a formal question, my environmental person would know exactly what to tell you immediately. Which is why I have her as my expert environmental person. But I apologize. I don't know what document this is from to share with you.
So if your preferred, Stephen, if your preferred contact information is what's associated with your registration for tonight's virtual meeting, we can get that information to you with no problem at all. So if that's your preferred contact information, that's great. We have it. If you have other contact information that you would appreciate, you can use that. And Polly, we appreciate your comment as well, and we'll be sure to note that with the project documentation. So appreciate that very much. And we're going to go ahead and give folks a couple of minutes to wrap up questions. We're going to turn cameras off, just let it roll for a couple of minutes. And if there are a couple of questions or comments that we can back clean up on and clean up, we will do so. But otherwise, I want to give people a chance to make the break if they did join us and they need to go about their evening and do other things. I'm going to give them that opportunity. But thank you very much for joining us this evening. Do check out the website. And while there, if you sign up for project updates, it's a great idea. We'll keep you informed of what's happening along the way, and you'll know when we hit those milestones. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we will keep the chat function open for a couple of more minutes.
Yep.
I think that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us this evening. And please do follow the project and stay in touch with our progress along the way. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.